Wild Wild West is the film to which all Keanu Reeves fans, as well as fans of the Wachowskis' The Matrix, should be extremely grateful. The first person who was offered the role of Neo was the well-known Will Smith. He considered the offer for some time, but in the end decided that Wild Wild West was more interesting and had a better chance of success. Besides, its director was the same person who directed Men in Black and who he had already worked with before. The Matrix, in turn, seemed to be helmed by some questionable individuals. Smith later said that refusing to star in The Matrix was the biggest mistake of his career. The actor admits that had he known about the film's huge budget, he would have accepted the role right away. But when the Wachowskis were offering him the role, they were focusing on the fact that he would be shot by 50 cameras at once and constantly suspended on wires against green screens. He said he simply misunderstood them and chose to decline. At the time, no one wanted to be in The Matrix, so it's unfair to blame Smith for his decision. For example, the next person to turn down the role after Smith was Jean Reno. He chose to appear in Roland Emmerich's Godzilla instead. Had he not refused, Agent Smith would have been different as well, and Hugo Weaving would probably still be playing Australian farmers. Russell Crowe, for some reason, didn't want to play Morpheus. What a movie this could be! Not to mention Sandra Bullock's claim that she was offered to play Neo. Who did they consider for the role of Trinity then? Wild Wild West began production in the early 1990s. Richard Donner, the director behind the Lethal Weapon franchise, was appointed to lead the project. Naturally, Mel Gibson was cast as the film's lead. However, after a year and a half, both individuals left the project because of constant financing problems. The studio wouldn't allow Donner and Gibson to include some of their big ideas in order to keep the project from turning into a comedy. When Donner and Gibson realized they could not make the film they wanted, they left Wild Wild West and quickly produced Maverick, in which they brought some of their ideas to life. In fact, Maverick is a pretty good illustration of what Gibson and Donner's Wild Wild West could have been like. Once Gibson and Donner left the boat, Tom Cruise showed interest in playing the lead. The actor was very enthusiastic about the project and even participated in writing the script, while also choosing a stylish cowboy hat for himself. Cruise didn't want to turn the film into an outright comedy, and the studio was very happy about that. Filming on Wild Wild West was about to begin, but in 1995, Cruise left the project to pursue Mission Impossible, which he found more interesting. Following this, the production of Wild Wild West was put on hold until 1997, when director Barry Sonnenfeld expressed interest in it. At his suggestion, the script was changed again, this time to include scale and elements of fantasy. Around that time, the film was joined by Will Smith, who had turned down The Matrix. Wild Wild West was supposed to be a very successful film. It had it all. One of the biggest stars in the lead, a very popular television series as its inspiration, a huge budget for the time, and a seemingly talented director. Therefore, everyone expected the film to be a huge success from the very beginning, when the director, cast, and budget were decided. Everyone except Robert Conrad, the actor from the original TV series The Wild Wild West. Barry Sonnenfeld personally offered Robert a cameo in the film, but after reading the script, Conrad refused. The actor thought that the script was terrible and had no regard for the original series. Conrad was almost 70 at the time, and maybe that's why nobody took him seriously when he said that. With such creators at the helm, the film could only go downhill. As everyone knows now, the filmmakers were not able to make a big profit in cinemas. The movie bombed at the box office. Its failure could have been less severe, though. The movie's original budget was lower, with $120 to $130 million spent on filming. However, during the first test screenings arranged by the studio, the film did not fare well with the audience. They couldn't tell whether they were watching a comedy or a steampunk fantasy. Viewers complained that the film was overly serious at times. Because of that, especially silly scenes that were supposed to cause laughter instead caused confusion. In response to the criticism, the studio decided to conduct extensive additional filming for Wild Wild West, with a focus on adding comedic elements. That's when the film introduced a giant spider and Smith cracking jokes at every turn. Kevin Smith, director of Clerks and Dogma, claims that it was producer John Peters who insisted on including the spider in the movie. Originally, the giant spider was supposed to be in Superman Lives, that Tim Burton was going to shoot in the second half of the 1990s. Nicolas Cage was cast as the lead. However, after the failure of Batman and Robin, the studio canceled Burton's project. Peters, who worked on it with Burton, was so eager to see the giant spider that he incorporated it into Wild Wild West. It's hard to say why the efforts of so many fairly talented people who genuinely wanted to make the film succeed went to waste. Despite the film's $170 million budget, even Will Smith, who's well known for loving high fees, agreed to a significant decrease in his usual pay. Enemy of the State, released a year before Wild Wild West, earned him $14 million, while the fantasy western brought him only $7 million. Despite total production costs of around $240 million, the film only grossed $222 million in theaters. Many people believe that the film's box office earnings in the US could have been even lower, as many of the tickets to Wild Wild West were bought by children to then try to sneak into screenings of South Park and American Pie. Both films were rated R, while Wild Wild West was PG-13, allowing children to easily purchase tickets. All three films were screened in theaters at the same time. Will Smith admitted in several interviews that he was aware of the film's mediocre quality, and therefore he was very surprised when it grossed nearly $50 million in American theaters on its first weekend. He later repeatedly apologized to Robert Conrad, who refused to make a cameo appearance and consistently criticized the film. Smith insisted that it was not their fault, things just happened that way. According to screenwriters S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock, almost nothing from their original script made it into the film. The original script had a serious tone, blending a Western vibe with a hint of mysticism. However, later writers turned it into a farce and action film with giant spiders. The screenwriters tried to stop the studio from including their names in the credits, but they were denied due to various obligations. They both later received the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Screenplay. These guys gained fame for their work on Tremors and Short Circuit. Robert Conrad attended the Golden Raspberry Award ceremony and personally received 3 awards. He said he did this to express his dissatisfaction with how poorly the filmmakers treated the original series. By the way, despite the film's box office failure and the impressive harvest of Golden Raspberries, the soundtrack Wild Wild West by Will Smith topped the Billboard charts for several weeks. This was a truly remarkable achievement. Barry Sonnenfeld, Will Smith, Kevin Kline, and Salma Hayek were also open about their dislike for the movie. Hayek believes that her character was underused and that she deserved much more. Kevin Kline says that he was too good of an actor for such garbage and that the studio showed him some other script to trick him into this movie. Will Smith and Sonnenfeld blame everything on additional filming and the studio that ruined the original plan. Ted Levine, who joined the film back when Tom Cruise was set to play the lead, also always criticizes the resulting movie. He says that the script was excellent in the mid-1990s, but constant rewrites turned it into an incoherent mess. But the film's main problem, in his opinion, was Will Smith. Levine believes that he was completely unfit for the role and only got into the film because of his close friendship with the director and his reputation. The actors are not the only ones who blame Warner Brothers for the failure. Many Hollywood analysts claim that the studio gave up on the film while it was still in production. Rumor has it that after Wild Wild West went into additional filming, some at Warner Brothers offices began to call it the black sheep of the family. The information quickly spread throughout the studio's departments, and consequently, absolutely everyone gave up hope on the movie. As a result, no one from the studio's quality control department wanted to work on it, and management literally had to force them to. It's a fairly common occurrence in Hollywood. Sylvester Stallone often criticized it during interviews. According to him, it's a common practice in the film industry when people, instead of trying to resolve an issue that arose on set, abandon the film and avoid it like the plague. The failure of Wild Wild West severely damaged Barry Sonnenfeld's career and ruined Kevin Kline's reputation as a major actor. During the 1990s, the actor played the lead in a number of box office hits. Surprisingly, Smith managed to avoid consequences. After Wild Wild West, he had 2 more consecutive failures with The Legend of Bagger Vance and Ali. Yet, with each subsequent role, the actor received more and more money. By the way, Wild Wild West, just like The Lone Ranger, was intended to be a trilogy. The same goes for Cowboys and Aliens, which failed just as badly. Perhaps viewers aren't really interested in fantasy westerns, so investing a lot of money in such films might not be the best idea. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and stay tuned.